Welcome to another preview show for Patrons Golf. It's the RBC Heritage at Harbour Town. Did a little bit of a preview on the last episode with the Masters recap, but going to do a little bit of a expanded chat here with this, just going over a little bit of the course setup, the weather outlook, and some player profiles kind of in depth, and just a little bit what it's like to, I guess, find some success here at Harbour Town. So one of the smaller courses, it's a peat dye course. Most holes have water. It's filled with tree-lined fairways, sharp doglegs, overhanging branches, and this is one of the, I would say, probably one of the most unique tests that players probably have all year. The driver is kind of taken out of their hands, a lot of it, and the I guess the approach play really does kind of take over. We see a increase in approach shots from 150 to 200 yards, which is above the PGA Tour average, and just the bulk player approach shots do come from that 100 to 200 yards. And look, the recipe for success here is pretty simple. It's iron accuracy, it's hitting fairways, it's being really, really sharp around the green. And I think with where Harbour Town is kind of situated, it's one of those courses that can be heavily affected by the wind. Most rounds we've seen over the last few years here have had heavily affected days with wind. So every day, I think, probably poses a different challenge for these guys. If we're going to go look at the weather outlook right now, it does look pretty good. There doesn't seem to be a lot of difference between the days. Sunday looks like it might have some wind gusts, which could make things a little bit interesting. But as of right now, it doesn't look like there's a massive advantage, from the AM or PM wave for the first round. So, yeah, I'll get into, I guess, some of the player stuff, shortly. But I do think that there's no real advantage right now if you're looking to take someone based on whether they're AM PM or PM AM for the first 2 days. One of the things I do love about Harbour Town is kind of how it finishes. You've got kind of these two, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing holes. The par 3 17th, which plays over water, and then the par 4, which kind of plays along the water and towards that massive lighthouse, which is obviously probably what most people think about when they think of Harbour Town, is kind of that view on the approach shot. But this is probably it's probably one of the most demanding stretches I think players will finish on. I think a lot of that's obviously factored in on the weather conditions. So I think we did see, when I think it was Webb Simpson won, there wasn't a ton of weather or bad wind gusts, if you want to say that. And so it probably played a little bit different compared to kind of the last few years. But this tends to end in a playoff almost every year. So if you look at the quality of the players that have won the last few years, it's really no surprise that this is probably a tournament that, I will get into it shortly, but I do think this is a Scotty tournament. That's not really going out on a limb and saying much, but this to me feels like, especially with how Scotty kind of played, especially on Sunday, I think this is a Scotty tournament. So I've played accordingly, but look, for me, I guess, what does success look like this week? I kind of mentioned it. It kind of favors this certain type of player, accurate off the tee, elite approach, and then you've got to be super strong around the greens. Bombers can contend, but they really have to be adaptable and play a different style of the game. You're not going to absolutely brute the course. So my key stats for this week, and what I'm kind of looking at with players, is kind of strokes gained around the green, strokes gained approach, proximity from 150 to 200 yards. I kind of mentioned that there's just an increase in those kind of mid iron shot approach shots in. So you're looking for players who have really good proximity to that, because Harbour Town has the second smallest greens on the PGA Tour. And then the last two I'm looking at is a good drive percentage, and then also comp courses where it's playing less than driver. So I think with that kind of last point around the comp courses and the less than driver, I'm looking at a couple of courses in particular, like Pebble Beach and Wailea. I think they're two good examples, purely just based on, I guess, the proximity to water and the fact that both of them can be kind of wind affected the same way that Harbour Town can. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm looking for this week. As I said before, it does feel like a Scotty week to me. So on the back of that, I have kind of looked completely away from that top group of guys. If I'm going to, I'll bring up the market here, but I'm kind of looking away from that kind of first group behind Scotty, your Henleys and Shawfleys, Fitzpatrick, all those guys. Russell Henley has a incredible record on kind of on these less than driver short courses, but I'm probably not prepared to take a stab at him at that price. I've kind of gone after the kind of mid-tier guys, and like one of the guys that kind of stands out for me this week is Daniel Berger. A few things that kind of stood out to me is the approach numbers are, kind of almost second to Scotty in most aspects. I think the around the green stuff is probably where he's going to be exposed this week. But look, I think at his price point, a couple of numbers that kind of stand out to me. His proximity from 100 to 150 yards, he's second. This is based on the last 16 rounds. His proximity from 150 to 200, he's sixth. He's sixth in strokes gained approach. And a good drive percentage of is coming in at 10th. So there's a lot of the key criteria that he kind of ticks off. And you're kind of getting him around, I think he's around 90. He certainly was when I bet him. We'll see what he is. So he's out to 100 on Betfair right now. So I think like my approach with it, I think it being a Scotty week, I'm looking to just take a couple of shots in this range. So I think, the stuff around the greens is not good, and he's going to have to find a way to be, I guess, not even okay, and that might not even be enough. But I do think if he can kind of figure that out for 4 rounds, like he's going to be in the thick of it on Sunday. So that's someone I'm absolutely happy to take a shot at. Next one, I've got Ben Griffin. Clearly not the same player that we saw last year. Strokes gained in approach and off the tee are lowest in his career, and has had 0 top 10s for a guy who did it in pretty much 40% of his events last year. So you're going to get a price in that Berger range, but I do think we saw some signs at Augusta that he's potentially turning things around. So I removed the last round from this because his last round, his Sunday was awful. Like a lot of guys had just absolutely awful Sundays, but I think it was pretty. There's a lot of good signs over the first 3 days. So 7 strokes gained total over the first 3 rounds. He gained almost a shot on approach. Tee to green 2 strokes, around the green 1.4, and he gained 5 strokes putting. Now that's obviously propping up his total numbers there, but I think this is a guy whose approach numbers haven't been great this year. He's lost strokes on approach in 6 of his the 9 events going into the Masters. But if I look at his 2025 season, he lost strokes on 6 events with approach for the whole year. So look, I'm happy to take a shot. He's in that Daniel Berger 100, 110 price range. I did kind of strip back his results just to see if how he kind of fared, and I guess courses which play less than driver, and he's in his last 10 starts, he's 3 top 10s and 6 top 20s, and his approach numbers were much nicer there. So look, you're taking a chance, which is obviously why you're getting that price. But look, if this guy turns around his form, like there's absolutely zero chance that you're getting 110 in almost any other tournament this year. Maybe outside of the majors, but so yeah, Ben Griffin ticks a couple of boxes for me, and I'm happy to take a run at him at that price. Last one's probably a little bit tougher of a sell. And like I have prefaced this in my preview article that this is more of a top finishes play than an outright play. I have still had a little bit of a bet on him, a little bit of a small play in the outright, but it's Andrew Putnam. I don't think a player of his quality wins a signature event, especially with a field like this. But I do think that there are some aspects to his game where he can have a really good week. He's coming off a T5 at the Valero, and his numbers around the green and off the tee are really good and elite. And in the last 16 rounds, he ranks first in scrambling, first in strokes gained around the green, and he's third in driver accuracy percentage and good drive percentage. So his approach numbers are where he falls away pretty drastically. So look, you're getting a price that's probably well and truly banked in on the fact that he's not one of those elite ball strikers. But look, I think there's enough there in his game where he can have a good week and a good finish. His approach numbers were really good at Valero, and I think like with the possibility of like tough conditions on any day, I think it probably does give guys like Putnam probably more of a chance to have a good day, in case he gets the right weather window, and he's kind of able to lay it back off the tee and just hit fairways and greens, and use his scrambling to his benefit. So that's another guy I've taken a small bet in the outright, but have also gone a top 5, top 10 just to throw out there. So there's three guys there. There's another guy in here who I came across a little bit earlier. Didn't really dive too deeply in his numbers, but like his number just seems insanely wrong to me. Is Chris Gotterup, who's currently at 90. You can get him with Thigala and Ryan Gerard and Jason Day. To me, it just kind of seems like a completely wrong price. Like even like guys like Alex Noren and Brian Harmon, who I actually think Brian Harmon actually does size up really well for this tournament, but like at $90, like I'll absolutely take a play on a guy who's won 4 times in the last 12 or so months. So kind of 4 guys that really, I guess, probably really talk to me going into the Heritage. First round leader, I think for this one, there's not too much of a different approach. For me, I'm probably a little bit more inclined to look at the number and kind of weight. I think that's one of the beauties of Betfair. And I've kind of taken a couple of shots at some guys who I think, kind of look really good from certain aspects in their game. Maverick McNeely, spoke about him in the Masters recap in terms of guys I think profile really well for the Masters next year. Gained 3 strokes around the greens at Augusta. This is going to be another challenge and where that kind of needs to come in. And I've taken a shot at him for the first round leader. Rio as well. Alex kind of mentioned in the Masters, I think like his ceiling is so high, and I think he's one of those players that on his day, his approach his approach shots are can be absolutely lights out, and so like that's kind of the guy I'm looking for, I guess, when I'm betting a first round leader. Because you never know what you're going to get from them in a certain day. Another guy I was happy to take a shot at a big price was Austin Smotherman, a guy who's already shown, a couple of times that he comes out pretty hot. His approach numbers are really good. I mean, you watch him swing, and his swing is just absolutely beautiful on the eyes, and I think he's probably a similar story to Daniel Berger in the fact that, like the approach numbers and the approach game is really good. It's around the greens, which is kind of where it falls off. I think there's some aspect as well, like he did kind of have a really good month there. He cashed first round leader already this year. And yeah, I think there's a potential of like maybe a little bit of his form has dropped away over the last couple of weeks. I think he had a kid, but like look at that price, I'm happy to take ball strikers and hope that they figure it out. And yeah, I've taken a little bit of a run at Putnam, kind of the same approach, and another one that was just kind of the price was too big at the moment was Nick Taylor. I think that's a guy who has that spike round history, so he can go off any day, and that's kind of what I'm looking at for the first round leader. I haven't played these too heavily, because I think it's one of those tournaments where you do want to watch the weather conditions up until fairly late, especially obviously being in Australia. It's probably something I need to probably check fairly late in the night, sort of early morning US time, to see kind of what it's been doing. But look, there are some of the players I'm kind of looking at for the first round, for the winner, for top finishes. So looking forward to it. Love signature events, and I love an event where it is like a massive challenge to the players. I think, I'm not saying I want to see some wind, but there's nothing quite like seeing the pros come down to our level, have a little bit of a challenge. I will just touch on there is a LIV event as well this week. I mean, at some point yesterday, it looked like there might not have been a LIV event ever again, which I think this is clearly the last year we're getting LIV based on what I've been reading. But alas, we are in Mexico City, which looks to be a very interesting track. So they had 3 WGC championships there. Funny enough, Dustin Johnson's actually won 2 of them. So in 2017 and 2019, he won. Phil Mickelson won in 2018. Patrick Reed won the other one. So there's 4 events, sorry. Patrick Reed obviously no longer on LIV, so that's completely irrelevant information. But I'm looking at last year's event. Lucas Herbert had a 61. John Rahm's had a 61 here before the WGC. So I think it's one of those events where the ball completely flies because of its location in terms of where it is in the sea against sea level. Look, John Rahm and Bryson are just way too short for me to bet, and it seems like they're kind of the only 2 guys who are massively dialed in and winning every week on LIV now. So it's the way I'm playing LIV is a lot different to the start of the year. There's kind of 2 guys who look pretty, I guess, decent value to me. Like Thomas Dietrich is someone, I think he's had 4 or 5 top 10s already. And look, you want to talk about, like, I guess why LIV might not necessarily be, have a 2027 season. It's probably the lack of needle movers they've signed, but like Thomas Dietrich won on the PGA Tour last year, and he's been pretty good. this year, if I'm being honest. So I do think that's a guy who probably wins eventually. Get him $32 on Betfair at the moment. Lucas Herbert, $38 for a guy who shot a 61. I think it was a 61, unless I completely read it incorrectly. But at 38, I'll happily take a little bit of a run at that, and just hope that he can kind of find a way to have some of that spark. And the other one that's probably a little bit of a bigger play is Caleb Surratt. Had a good Saturday, Sunday at this event last year. Had a horrible first round and sort of finished 9 under. So yeah, at 65, I'm kind of banking that, he kind of figures it out for 4 rounds, and I think he's the potential to be there at the end. But I will say that I don't really know a hell of a lot about this course. It looks like it has small greens, which do look to be fairly fast. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a complete resort style beatdown that these LIV events kind of seem to be most weeks. But yeah, I guess fairly reserved. I'm fairly reserved while John Rahm and Bryson just seem to be winning every single event. So yeah, that's really it for LIV. That's it for the RBC. Enjoy. I'm looking forward to seeing who wins the red tartan blazer, which is an absolute horrific look every year after you go from the handing out the green jacket. But thank you for tuning in. This has been Patrons Golf, and hope you find a few winners.